Hi, Bob.
Hi. Good evening.
Been a long time.
It has been a while.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's. Yeah, I can't remember the last time I've been able to sit down and have a conversation with you. You're very busy, so you're hard to get a hold of.
Well, less busy now than I used to be, but yeah, we don't cross paths much.
Yeah.
My circles are pretty small.
Yeah, mine too.
Traveling, so yeah. And you're
Mine
a busy
too.
guy, family and things.
Smart guys, keeping your circle small.
We have Bob Chamberlain in the studio today. Tough intro because you don't really know where to start. But what if you had to describe yourself? How would you introduce yourself?
First, if you don't mind, I want to know what you're doing right now because I haven't seen you in a while. Can I ask that question? Is that
sure.
okay? And Brock
absolutely.
kind of filled me in a little bit of what he's doing. So what's going on?
I got a family. Number one, we're a big family now. So we have 4 kids, my wife and I. So we're spending most of our time parenting and doing a family life type of thing. That's number one. We own the cafe in town, so we do that. And then I own an electrical business on the side, or not on the side, but so we do that too. So we're very, very busy. That's basically it. Yeah.
You know, the last time we spent much time together, you were just dating Brielle.
Yeah.
And you were just so madly in love with that girl.
That's right. Still, yeah.
It was really exciting. It was fun
Yeah.
to watch you guys. So that was great. So
Yeah, that was 10, 11 years ago. But
I remember hearing about those like bonfires over at Chamberlain's, and I was always either in Connecticut or wherever. And I was like, man, I hate to miss those. Yeah. It sounded like some good times.
I have a list. And I don't know. I stuffed it in my garage somewhere, but I had a bunch of those guys, your friends, over, and we asked all these questions about what their future plans were. I wrote them all down. So
no kidding.
I have this like time machine thing going in my garage that I should
There you
pull
go.
out sometime. So yeah.
Oh man.
Fun, so.
Yeah,
that pretty much sums up where we're at right now. Kids and jobs. So it's kind of our phase of life, and I think we'll be in that for a while. So.
Probably enough, yeah.
Which is good. Yeah, we're very happy and it's going well.
Yeah, that's a fast lane to be in.
Yeah.
Life goes quick when you're busy, right?
Yep.
For me, let's see. Yeah, we are parents, 2 little kids, 2 girls under 2 at one time. They're almost 3 and 1 now. That keeps us pretty busy. Just trying to learn how to navigate that a little bit. But actually, professionally, kind of figuring out how to scale and grow our company. It's been kind of maybe the number one thing on the agenda recently. So we're kind of reaching out, kind of looking for opportunities to expand our operations and get some more clientele in there. And so how to do that. It's luckily I'm surrounded by a lot of good businessmen and women, so I'm just going to sit here and absorb whatever you got for me.
How did you guys meet? How did you guys get to know each other?
I can answer that.
Go for it.
We probably not even softball. You would have been already playing county league at that point, but I feel like that's how I met Calder.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember how. Calder and I were roommates in college.
Roommates.
And for the first 2 years of school, and we hung out, like our mutual friend group was the same. So
Sure. Yeah,
Brock
like
would have
Paul
been
Huntington and
Brock
all
was
of
in
those
school
guys.
at the time, but a lot of us were still local, a few years older. So all the guys that I would have hung out with would have been also friends with Brielle. So our friend group was the same, and that's how Brielle and I met. And then that kind of led into Brock and I meeting, which is being, around Brielle. So, but also mutual friends. Like it was just the whole friend group was the same, including Brielle and the guys. So
You had quite a group of young people that did a lot of neat stuff together, didn't you? So,
Yeah, it's kind of unique.
basically.
Like I don't know a lot of friend groups, at least guy friend groups, who grow up together and are such high quality men. Like I watch their lives and their careers and their families, and I'm just like, I don't know if anybody can understand that unless you have it.
Yeah. It's unique, I think.
Yeah.
I had a similar thing too.
we really got to know each other when we became college roommates for a little while, and that was a blast.
That was fun. I was doing some master's work in Potsdam, and he was finishing up his business.
Potsdam alum.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I am. Yeah,
I noticed the license plate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which I remember when I
represent.
saw it, but yeah.
Represent.
1979. Where were you in 1979?
Not even a whisper of a thought, probably.
Yes. not
So
even
last
a
question.
whisper.
So how did you guys get doing these podcasts? What made you?
That is a good question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think we probably talked about it for a year-ish leading up to it. Does that sound right? I have a terrible memory, so none of this may be true at all. But I think for a little while, at least somewhere around a year, we had talked about maybe doing something, and then we're kind of spur of the moment decided to just do it. And within a span of a week or two, that's the part I might be wrong on. To me, it felt like within the course of a month, we decided, let's just go for it.
Sure.
But maybe it took longer. I don't know. I feel like it was not that long.
Yeah, I think for me, it was more, there was a lot of people around here I wanted to hear from, kind of, at least to start. A lot of good stories, a lot of good wisdom. But also something my dad had said about not having his grandparents on record telling their lives, kind of. So, like, not only will my kids be able to kind of watch and pass that down too, but like we've had both of my grandpas on. It's so valuable to me.
It's huge.
And so, yeah, and I'm really interested to learn more about business and being a better father, being a better husband, and, you know, working hard and self-improvement and fitness and some of those things that, like, are buzzwords in culture, and everybody wants to optimize their life and get better, but, like, I really want to get better in some of those things.
And we have kind of a hole-in-the-wall community that happens to still have
tons
of
of
attracted people that are worth talking to,
yeah.
like Wilbur and yourself.
Yeah.
So it felt like a good opportunity to try to maybe put Louisville on the map a little bit and learn a little something.
Well, the historical thing is great. I've had a lot of older people in my life pass by, and I've always said, boy, I wish somebody had interviewed them. I wish somebody had, back then, audio taped them or something, you know. And because there's history that you never get back.
Right.
You know? So this is the technology you guys have available to you allows you to do these things really quite nicely, and it's going to be valuable someday. It's great. So
and then it just came down to being like, how long are we going to talk about something? Which is other parts of my life are like that too. I'm like, man, I talk a lot about doing something. It's like I just need to do it, and kind of step out and have the courage, like Kurt Heisey would say, just it's okay to fail. It's all right. Like, just go and do it and make your life better, and you're the one that's going to be able to do that. And so, like, we decided, let's just go for it and see where it goes. So there was a good amount of research and stuff that had to go into it, because we wanted it to be, if we were going to do it, we wanted to do it right. And it felt like that's just kind of our personality. Like, if you look at Nick in business especially too, it's like he wants to do it right. So
it's great.
Yeah. Which a lot of doing the podcast right, it could be attributed to Brock. He puts a lot of time into it, and
well, when I listen, they're
I'll
just technically good. They're technically good. Well done.
That would be Brock's talent, and he's kind of always had that skill, I think. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it even, correct me if I'm wrong, but getting your grandparents in that generation on record has been a desire of yours, and I think Christian had talked about it too a little bit, for a pretty long time. So this was kind of a nice medium to make that happen. Yeah,
and I'd always been interested I'm pretty creative sometimes, like with film or video work. So I've done some of that before for some other companies, just advertising, marketing. But I had a business idea too at one point, trademark. I was going to call it the Legacy Project or Project Legacy, and just have people say, hey, look, I got a bunch of interviewing equipment. Do you want to hear your great-grandpa before he's gone, or your grandfather, or your dad? Like, life's precious, and you don't know the last time you see somebody. Absolutely. So, and I hear a lot of people be like, oh, well, I don't even remember what my grandfather's voice sounds like. I don't remember. It's like,
and you're videoing it as well. For example, I never met either my grandparents, my grandfathers, I should say, because they died when I was just a baby. And I only have 2 pictures of one of my grandfathers. That's it, 2 pictures. That's all I know of my grandfather Chamberlain.
Wow.
So so this is really a nice opportunity. Good that you guys are doing this. I mean, it's got good purpose to it, not just because it's fun for you, you know. So
we had, was it Grandpa Rogie we had on last? No, 2 episodes ago.
Yep.
And he had told a story about growing up in the Mennonite church. They didn't take pictures much. And so the only picture, is it his uncle or his dad?
No, it would have been his grandfather.
His grandfather.
It was...
So kind of the same thing. He had one picture of his grandfather because he happened to get captured in someone taking a picture right before he jumped behind something to like try to get out of the picture. And that's the picture that he has of his grandfather. The one picture. Yeah. And the story is behind it is like hilarious.
And he never knew him because he had died when I think Grandpa was like 2 or something like that. So he never really got to know him.
And he's smiling in the picture, which is funny. Like, it's nice. It's
and my grandkids, every game's been videoed, every birthday party, every family, everything is just documented like crazy, right?
Oh, so high def, 4K, everything's such good resolution.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Well, anyway, so I grew up in Beaver Falls. I was born in Lewis County General Hospital. I'm the youngest of four boys. I had two wonderful parents. My father was superintendent of schools when I was growing up, so that was kind of an interesting dynamic. And my mother was a health and homemaking teacher in school. So education was big in our family. My father was a World War II veteran. He fought in the Pacific in World War II, and then got called back to Korea afterwards. So the military part of our growing up was a big thing. We always flew the flag, that kind of thing, and education was important. And so I grew up in Beaver Falls, and I, much like you guys were speaking, I had a wonderful upbringing. I mean, it's just, we were free to run the streets a little bit. We had lots of friends, and they were good friends, and we just, competed at everything we did. We were just competing all the time in some way and playing ball of some sort or something. So it was just a great way to grow up. And I ended up going to school at Beaver River Central School and graduated in 1975. I didn't really have again, my family's well educated. All my brothers have gone on to high degree colleges and things, and I just was sort of an average student, sort of medium. So I ended up going to Potsdam. It was the only school I applied to, but I also was recruited to play basketball there. So at the time, that was important to me because that was something I put a lot of passion into. So I went to Potsdam and played basketball my freshman year. And then I ended up going into the field of physics, so we had a lot of laboratories in the afternoon. So my sophomore and junior years, I really wasn't able to practice, so I didn't play those years, and went back out my senior year and played. And I was a little behind, taking a couple of years off and being a senior, but it was a good experience, and I got to actually play in a national championship game, Division III national championship game in Rock Island, Illinois. So we got beat by 3 points. But it was a great experience. So then I go to graduate, and I didn't really have a passion for any particular career, but I had a degree in physics. And back then the choices were sort of going to teaching or going to research, and neither one of those really interested me that much, but there was an opportunity to become a field engineer in Ohio, which sounded good because I'd be out about and I'd be meeting with people a lot. So I went to Ohio and was a field engineer for a company that sold instrumentation into factories. So and at that time, the Midwest was full of industry. I got to see, Goodyear and Republic Steel and Timken and all these steel mills and things. It was just a great experience for me because I'd never seen any of that kind of thing. I saw where the Goodyear blimp was made and this kind of thing. So it was just a great experience for me. But I was 21 years old when I went there, and I was doing a job where everybody else was 35, like old people, and they're drinking 6 cups of coffee and smoking cigarettes. And I was getting a little kind of impatient with all that. And a friend of mine, one of my college roommate, who was working in Utica at a building supply at the time, just called one time and says, Bob, I think we ought to go into business. I go, what business? Let's go into contracting. Because he was dealing with contractors all the time, and they seemed to be successful. Ron, we don't know anything about contracting. So I said, we can do it, I think. We'll get jobs and we'll subcontract them. So I left my job in Ohio, which is a very good job, actually, well-paying and good benefits and all, and I just decided to go into business with a friend of mine. And we started out in Utica, and back in those days, you could sell a roofing job and subcontract it to a roofing company, and hopefully at the end you'd make something.
Yeah.
So, and in the meantime, you're learning some things a little bit. So we did that a little bit, and then I got a job here in Croghan for Pearl's Air. Actually, that'd be Christian's. That'd be Wilbur's aunt, so Christian's great aunt or something, right? Okay. You had him. Yep. And from there, we got another job, and as we went along, I learned a little bit more skill sets things, so I could do a few more things, and Ron and I could. And we started hiring some people who had the skills. So we built our business that way by hiring skilled people, and we ran this business. Ron, we just decided to go separate ways. He wanted to be back more in the Syracuse, Utica area, and I kind of wanted to stay here. So we split our business up. We're still best of friends today, and we see each other all the time. So I did the contracting thing for, I guess 11 or 12 years.
Wow.
And then one time my wife and I went out to dinner, and my aunt actually was babysitting and had my kids make posters of what's their favorite animal, what's their favorite color, what do they wish. And the two older ones said, I wish Dad was around more. Because back in those days, you didn't have cell phones, right? So
Yeah.
we'd work from 7 in the morning till 5 at night. I'd come home, and there'd be all these pink phone call slips on the table. I'd eat a quick dinner, and in my office, I'd go and make all these calls to people, and that was every single night and on weekends as well. So I realized that wasn't really the ideal thing. So I thought I should probably get out of the contracting business. So within a few months, the guys that worked for me, they kind of took the equipment and customers, and I actually had an opportunity to become a sales guy for a company in Syracuse where my original partner was working at the time. So we kind of reconnected there, and I was worked as a salesman for a company that sold things that went to schools, lockers, bleachers, gym equipment, laboratory equipment, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And so I did that for a little while. I did that for about 2 years. And after that, I felt like, gee, that's nothing much worthy about that. I'm just selling stuff, And so I happened to be heading up to Plattsburgh to visit an architect up there for my job. And I was driving by Potsdam State, and I said, I wonder what it'd take to become a teacher. So I turned the car around, I pulled into the School of Education. The Dean of Education was there. I walked in and said, hey, I'm going to graduate here several years ago, and what would it take for me to become a teacher? And he said, we're needing science and math teachers. So I had a MST program that with 16 months you could get your master's degree and get your student teaching in and become a teacher. So I said, sign me up. So I did that as well as my job together. And after the time was up, I had no idea how it was going to really play out because I wasn't really going to drive to Watertown every day to be a teacher. So it was just kind of a leap of faith. I said, let's try this. And it just happens that when I get done with my program, there's an opening at Beaver River for a science teacher. So I got that job. And that was a wonderful thing for me in my life because I'm pretty motivated. And I've always said to people, if you're really motivated, be careful going into business for yourself because there's no end to it. You can always do more. You can always do more, kind of thing. So the teaching thing was really, really good for me because they actually closed the doors eventually.
They make you go home.
Yeah, at Christmas time, they make you go home, and they even pay you. That's unbelievable.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty nice.
Wow, amazing.
That's a big plus.
So, and it was the biggest thing, though, for me was I think there's certain careers that are worthy. I think, the police work you were doing, that's a worthy thing. Nursing is worthy. Teaching is worthy. Any kind of EMT type stuff is worthy. Pastoring is worthy. There's certain things that are just, and that was teaching one of those. That satisfied my need to do something that had some worthiness to it. Plus, of course, I have 3 kids, and they're all going to be in that same school.
Perfect.
Beaver River is K through 12, so you're around them. So that was a really nice opportunity. I got to teach all 3 of my kids in the classroom, and I got to coach all 3 of them in different sports. So that was a really nice opportunity for me. But I've always had this inner drive to be an entrepreneur, so that was always kind of gurgling away inside of me. And then when Bob Leindecker, my partner in the Grand Slam safety venture, had this idea, he calls me in because he knows I'm kind of a sucker for these things. And I thought it was pretty cool. So that kind of got us on the whole concept of what are we going to do about this. And we had 2 other partners we brought in, Mickey Lehman and Dave Moore, and the 4 of us played around with this thing called Grand Slam Safety for a little bit. There was no stress, no commitment to it really. We were just exploring it. Bob had this idea for an outfield fence that was safe for kids to run into, a unique thing. And he had this concept in mind, and he was always very much an engineering kind of a minded kid. He always had the best running bicycle. And he always had, all of his stuff was always
fine-tuned,
and a little better than everybody else. Kind of thing.
Yeah.
So he had a natural for that kind of thing. So he, he had this idea, and we started just playing with it a little bit. And that became the Grand Slam safety concept, sort of. I don't know if I'm going to keep rambling on here or not.
Oh, this is great. I don't
really
want to say anything.
Okay, no, all right. So,
Yeah, for
I got
sure.
some questions, but you're
so,
good.
so we didn't know what to do with it, really. He had this idea, and we had nothing going for us. So we talked Beaver River into letting us give them a fence. They have a baseball field that had no fence. In fact, the reason this concept came up was Bob was at a basketball game, and it must have been halftime or something. He was hanging out and talking to the president of the Boosters Club, and they were talking about baseball, and he said, boy, it's too bad we don't have an outfield fence. And that got Bob thinking. He said, why don't we have an outfield fence? And so he got questioning a little bit, and he said, well, you got to have an outfield fence that's safe. You can't just put a chain link fence up there. In his eyes, you couldn't. So he just kind of started researching it. He got online and looked around what was available, and there really wasn't anything very good, very high quality available. So he kind of tweaked his interest. He already had an idea in mind of what could maybe work. And then he got playing around with the Patent and Trades Office to find out what there is for patents out there, to see if his idea had anything been thought about before, and he couldn't find anything there as well. So he thought that, kind of interesting. And we approached Beaver River about the idea, and they said, well, one thing is it's got to be removable because that's our practice football field in the football season. So we never thought about that. So we had to make a concept that could be removed, which was a bit of a challenge in our eyes at first. But that turned out to be one of our best features right now is the fact it can be removed. So we ended up making one. Bob was making things in his cellar and in his garage, and we found this company in, I think it was Buffalo, that did some sewing for us. And one of our partners' brother was a welding guy, so he was welding some stuff in his garage for us. So it was really much a mix mash of things all over. Hodgepodge all over the place,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, okay.
And we put it up with some volunteer help. Anyways, it went up, and gosh, it was like okay. It wasn't great, but it was okay. Mm-hmm. So
kind of a prototype.
Oh, definitely a prototype, yeah. And one of the deals we made with the school is we're going to be taking it up, putting it down, doing all kinds of stuff with it because we got to learn how this works.
Yeah,
and we certainly did. And Bob was again the guy who had the mindset for how to improve it and all. And
is that the fence that's still there?
It's the fence that's still there. It's been the fabric has been replaced now since, and
Okay.
we've tweaked it with new innovations here and there. But
what was the first flaw that had to be fixed? Do you remember?
First flaw.
Like you say, you had to keep going and innovating it and figuring out how to make it better. Do you remember the first
Yeah,
idea?
if I can explain, the fence is actually a tension fence, so the foul poles have tension on it. So I think the first flaw, I wish Bob was here, he'd have a better answer probably, but we didn't know about foundations. We just dug a hole, poured some concrete in there, and put a pole in the ground, right? Yeah. A sleeve with a pole in it. Yeah. And the foul poles were pulling in because the foundations weren't big enough for the tension of it. But we didn't know that. We didn't have any engineering at all. Yeah. So we had, that was probably our first issue we had.
Isn't that interesting? A bunch of highly intelligent men like yourselves figuring, and like such a normal problem occurred right off, and you didn't know, because you've never done it.
No, I know.
And like most new things like that, it's just trial and error.
Absolutely.
And you can't really avoid it. Did Bob have like an engineering degree or any engineering experience or anything like that? Maybe if you'd been doing it in the engineering field, you could have seen that coming, but most stories end up being trial and error.
Yeah, and I think we have to learn the hard way for some reason as humans, right? But even that was close. I mean, it didn't like pull all the way in. It just kind of leaned in a little bit. So we probably had 20% less concrete than we should have had in there. So his idea was close, or it just wasn't quite there. So, but we were able to kind of fix that, and a lot of changes and improvements pretty much. So we're still playing with this. There's not a lot of commitment. I think we each put in probably $10,000 at that point just to kind of keep the thing going. But then you get to the point of we're going to apply for a patent, and that's an expensive process. And we applied for the patent, and surprisingly, we get a patent. And now what do you do? Now you're kind of committed. You've got some
you're all in now.
Money in a little bit too.
Yeah.
Did it ever? Was the thought ever thrown around that, man, we either commit to this or like we like sell the patent? Like, did that conversation ever take place? Like, just this is scary. What do we do?
Yeah,
Get out now or
the conversation is, what do we do? Are we going to just let this go and then we'll figure out, do we sell a patent or not, or do we want to really pursue it? I think all four of us were kind of interested in this thing, but we all had jobs. We all have families. Who's gonna hop the hop here? So I happened to be just turning 55 that next fall, and I was able to retire from teaching after 19 years.
What year was that?
In 2012, I believe.
Okay, so we were your last class.
Probably, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I probably knew it, but
Yeah. And so I said, I like adventure. I like risk a little bit. We're all wired a certain way, and I think you're born that way. How well do you do risk? Some people do it really well, some don't. I've never really worried about the failure of things too much, and I think it's God just made me that way. I don't think it's anything I've done. Again, I had great parenting. They encouraged us. They were always all about us making mistakes and figuring it out afterwards and things, but I've just been wired that way. So I kind of said, I'll do it. I got to tell you, I have an incredible wife, because all these things I do, I just do them.
Yeah.
Like tonight when you guys go home, tell your wives that you're going to quit your jobs and you're going to go back to college and get a degree so you can become a teacher. See how that goes for you.
Yeah.
Really, do it. I encourage you to do that. Report back on that. So
I think I've used up all that capital for at least a couple of years.
She's always been just amazing to trust in my ideas and to support those things. And another just shout out to her is that she's always run the home. She's allowed me to have all these, because all these adventures I've done, they take time. They take time to do it well. You say you guys want to do things well. When I was coaching girls basketball, we were doing summer basketball for 25 hours a week, kind of thing. So it just takes time, So you have to have the support behind you. And in my case, I had my wife, Ellen, has always been very much supportive of all those kind of things. So that's an important piece of the whole thing, I think, because the only way I know to be successful for me in things is just to work really, really hard at them. A lot of time, a lot of effort, pay attention to details, and it seems to work out. But it's kind of a selfish thing when you think of it that way, because you're going to put all the time in, you're going to put all the details. What about the people around you, So, so I've been very blessed to have a wife that's willing to do that and to keep the house going well. She was a stay-at-home mom, which I really appreciate that as well. So,
because a lot of driven men that don't have that backing, what happens usually is they have a choice at some point, and they get to decide if they want to be married or if they're just going to go for their business. And I don't think they're mutually exclusive. You can do both, but it takes somebody behind the person with the ambition to be supportive and encouraging and not complain about things. And that's tough, though.
Yeah, and how do you know that going into it with a relationship? How do you know? I mean, how do you know what your future is? How do you know how that's going to play? So very fortunate to be able to do these things. So I leave teaching at 19 years, and if anybody knows that world at all, if you stay 20 years, it's a whole different thing for you, right? So,
sure.
But
for retirement and benefits.
Absolutely. I do have a story to that a little bit. When I was a contractor, young guy, probably 25 years old, we had rained out one day. I was in Gary's restaurant having coffee and breakfast or something, and there was a couple older guys at the table next to me, and they were talking about their jobs, and they were talking about how much they hated their jobs. And one guy was actually swearing about, I have, so many, 2 years, 3 months, 4 weeks, and I'm out of this job,
Yep.
And I looked at that guy, I said, I promised myself right now I'll never let myself do that. So whenever I've gotten in a career for myself, when I just felt like for some reason it was time to move on, and again, I think God speaks to me that way sometimes. He just gives me this whatever. I'm pretty quick to jump on things, So and again, I don't worry as much about failure. I don't take crazy risks. I mean, they're pretty calculated, but I'm not going to put time into worrying about the failure of something. Too much energy goes into trying to make something successful that it doesn't help any as all. So
that doesn't happen often. People like one more year and then just deciding, you must have. We could tell you were somewhere else. Yeah. I'm just kidding. You were a great teacher. Just joking. Yeah, well, phenomenal teacher. Made physics easy.
I tried hard and everything, but
hey, if you can make physics easy, then
I'm calling the lady in Albany who you got to sign up for retirement. She goes, "Sir, are you sure you know what you're doing?" I said, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure." She goes, "I really can't hang up here until I ask you again. Are you sure you know what you're doing here?" Kind of thing.
Wow.
So, and she was really actually concerned that I was making a big mistake. So And maybe I have. I don't know. We'll wait and see how it's played out.
You just call her back.
Did you feel that strongly about moving on to Grand Slam, or was it a combination of, like, were you ready to be done teaching, or was it a combination of both, or what was the main
I think there's a few things. One thing is I wasn't totally agreeing with New York State's ideals on discipline, how kids should be handled and things when there's issues. So that was a bit of a conflict for me internally. I kind of believe that when a student screws up, it's your job to correct that whole thing. And I think that was, to me, that was very important, that was a part of it. And it got to be harder and harder to have that be the case. You got reprimanded for those kind of disciplinary things in many cases. So it was hard for me in that way. Plus the excitement of this other opportunity. So that was going on. And my kids had all moved on. So the one part of the teaching, having them around, that was not really a factor anymore. So I think it was a bunch of things, several things, sure. So
yeah, that could be hard. I mean, it's almost in the teaching description. Like if you're going to be a teacher, and you got to be able to teach good things, bad things, things to get better at. Discipline doesn't mean what people think it means necessarily. Sure. Like disciple. Yeah.
And I grew up in a time when that was very acceptable to correct kids and to do things. So, I mean, that was not abusive in any way. Nobody ever.
Except for when you had Nick.
So, yeah, right. No.
Except for Nick.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Anyway, so I move on to this whole thing. So now here I am. I'm going to work at Grand Slam Safety. We don't have anything. We have nothing. We have no drawings. We have no business. We have no customers. We have absolutely nothing. And I'm just going to start beating the bushes a little bit and see what we can do. So we had Nate Barker. You know Nate Barker? He put together a website for us, just something simple. And he actually went and did a little video up at So our first fence that we really sold was, and I have to give a thank you to Phil Goings, who was the South Louis everything guy, right?
Yeah, he was Mr. South Louis.
Right, and he was a baseball guy, right? He was at Beaver River when we had the fence up, and he thought that was
reffing, umping,
he was
everything.
Mr. South Louis,
Mr. Sports,
And he saw the fence, and he thought it was pretty neat. He was pretty impressed by it. So when South Louis had a building project come up and they needed a fence, he's the one that promoted us to get the fence at South Louis.
Okay.
And again, really a coach doesn't have much say in these things typically. There's a board of education, there's a contractor involved, there's an architect involved. The architect has to specify these things and all this. So it's a bit of a push for somebody to try to get something like that done.
Yeah.
But Phil really stood behind us.
Yeah, he had some influence. Mr. Goins had him. I played against him. Yeah, he would have been the varsity coach at South Louis when I was there. And you could tell his word carried weight.
Yeah, apparently so. Because but that was a big step for us. So we had our first real job, and again, we don't have any drawings. We have nothing to go on. But I don't know how it ever worked out. But somehow we got our first project in at South Louis, and it went well, and it was successful, and that was the start of everything. And then again, we just had to beat the bushes. It was just so much. At one time, we bought a phone call list of all the Division 1, 2, and 3 and junior college athletic directors in the country. I think there's 3,800 of them. And we just started Bob and I calling 3,800 phone calls.
Wow. Cold calls.
3,800 cold calls. And I think I would guess probably every 100, 3 people would be willing to at least be nice to you, at least answer the phone call, right? And out of those, maybe every 500 you have one that was a possibility of really wanting something. So it was that kind of odds that we did. And that's how we started. I started going to some trade shows, so local New York State trade shows and East Coast trade shows, and we did some of these things. And again, all this time is still chewing up some money, and we're not really making anything, so we keep investing a little more into it. And then there was the Beaverite factory in Krogan was for sale. They had gone out of business, I think, in 2011. 60-some people worked there, and they were laid off before Christmas, and that building sat empty for a couple of years. It came for sale, a good price on it. So that's when we finally said, okay, now we really got to decide, are we really going to do this or not? Because now we're getting into some serious things.
Financial obligations.
Right? Geez. So we decided we would do it. We decided we'd try to fund it with people lending us money. So we had over $1 million lent to us by local people who just trusted us.
Amazing.
We had nothing to go on. We had no history. We had no anything, and they trusted us with that kind of money. The idea we'd pay them back over a 10-year period, sort of thing. So that was the seed money that got this whole thing going.
Wow.
And we were pretty sure $1 million would get us to the point we needed to get to, but it went, I don't know, for some reason in my head I had like 5 years. This thing would be rolling in 5 years. Well, 5 years came and gone, and we weren't rolling yet, so we're still getting more and more. So we ended up going about $1.5 million in debt with local people to try to get this to go, and just as it's starting to get some traction and getting a little momentum on the whole thing, then COVID hits.
Oh.
And they shut us down. We were not essential, so we were closed, and we had no idea how that was going to play out because we really had no surplus to survive off of, right? So we were able to get some of the PPP money that the government gave, and that helps us at least restart up again. And then ever since then, we've kind of been growing a little bit. We're still not thriving, I wouldn't say, but we are growing, and we're getting stronger, I think, all the time. And we've got lots of new people in there that are smart and young and have a lot of skill sets that we didn't have and things. So hopefully there's a good future for it, I hope. I'm not really that active in it right now. I'm working as a part-time sales guy because sales is always a need for those kind of businesses. So I'm just doing sales right now.
Do you enjoy that?
I love that, yeah. I like sales. I like people. I don't see any pressure in it, any responsibility really much as compared to having the responsibility for a whole bunch of people working and things. So it's been good. I like that.
Can you explain what you mean when you say you don't feel a lot of pressure in sales? Because isn't that exactly what sales is? It's pressure to sell?
Yeah.
Or are you just making sales all the time that's not a problem? What do you mean you don't feel pressure?
Yeah. No, I don't make sales all the time at all. No, I just find that I don't have to try to... if you have a product you think is good, it'd be hard to sell a product you didn't really believe in. That'd be a challenge. If you really believe in what you're selling, and I do, I just have to talk to people. I don't try to talk anybody into anything. Mm-hmm. And I learned when I was a contractor, actually, salespeople come around, and again, that was before the internet. That was before all the information out there, and a salesperson was really valuable to me. I could learn a bunch of stuff from a salesperson. I could learn the latest products, the latest tools, the latest things, So I did not look at salespeople as a burden. I looked at them as an opportunity to get more knowledgeable on things. And I feel like I'm that for these people. And if they don't want to talk to me, that's fine. I just move on. But for somebody who really, like, I'll get a call just yesterday or today. I got a call out of Virginia. This guy called and says, I'm looking at opening up an indoor sports facility. Mm-hmm. What can you tell me about what I'm going to need for this? Well, I have a lot of information I can share with the guy. I'm a good resource for him. So we'll see what happens there. But that's something that and now Grand Slam offers a really nice variety of products. I talked about the outfield fence. That's how we started the whole thing. That's probably less than 20% of our business right now is outfield fences. It's mostly indoor sports facility things. So
like drawdown nets for sectioning off indoor facilities. Yep. Yeah, it seems a big need for that.
So that's our biggest thing. So anyways, I find it, again, I love competition. Every call is a competition. I win or I lose, and I thrive on that a little bit,
Well, sure you do, especially with your sports background.
So,
So did you play ball at all, or baseball at all growing up, or were you mostly basketball?
I knew nothing about baseball. I was a track and field guy. I coached track and field.
That's right, track and field, yeah. So that would have been your spring activity.
Right.
So what was it like getting into a baseball-oriented, at least at the beginning?
So when I would go to the USA baseball convention, and all these guys are baseball, right?
Yeah. And live like Phil Goins.
Just live, breathe baseball. I'd say, listen, I don't know anything about baseball. They go, how can you have this company? So I'm just saying it's a great product we have here, but I'm a track and field guy, So and they always, they don't need me to know much about baseball. To be honest with you, they know the baseball, right? Yeah. They need me to know how I can offer a product for them, I guess. So So no, I'm not much of a baseball guy.
Yeah, you skimmed over the basketball career.
We're going to go into that. We got some questions. So it's fascinating to me that you didn't see that as an issue, because I think that personally for me, I would feel very uncomfortable in a room where I didn't feel like I had any credibility. That wasn't anything for you to overcome. You were confident that they didn't need you to be that person, that they trusted your knowledge in the product, and you were really confident in that? You didn't feel insecure at all?
I will say I think that the key to that is you got to be honest with them. You just got to let them know. People appreciate honesty. Yeah. You know, because I know something about some things. I don't know what the distance from home plate to first base is for 12 and under baseball, though. I don't, that kind of thing. I don't know all those things. And I would just let them know that, I think. So I think the fact that I'm not going to try to
be somebody you're not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think people appreciate that, and that goes a long way sometimes, I think. So
people have pretty good meters.
Yeah,
seems like
it wouldn't go well.
Be genuine. Hey, if I don't know something that resonates with somebody, I can trust this person.
Yeah.
I'll say,
they're not just going to sell me on something they don't know anything about. Yeah.
Maybe that's the issue, is when you try to be somebody you're not, that's when the issues arise.
Well, it's one misstep. Like you say one wrong thing about baseball, claiming to be a baseball guy, and you're like, man, it is like it.
And they don't like you. They're never going to like you.
Yeah, right. And I'm a big believer in trying to meet people personally, if you can. I mean, it's part of my generation, I think. Plus, I think that's where you really get to feel people out when you see them in person. So I flew all over the place to go to meetings, and I'll say that probably, gosh, I don't know if I ever I don't think I ever flew to a meeting and didn't get the job. If the job went on, if the job went forward, I don't think so. One thing is people aren't doing that much anymore, so that our competitors aren't flying out and meeting with people. But
Zoom
also,
calls, everything's Zoom.
Right. I think people still prefer people, and ultimately, I think. Now, COVID changed all that because COVID made Zoom the only way to do it, right?
Yeah.
So that was a whole different thing. And since COVID, people are less interested in meeting with you. Your generation's less interested in meeting with people than my generation were. So it's less now than it was 10 years ago, let's say.
Speaking of competitors, how long has Grand Slam been in business now?
So we've been officially in business, I think, since 2008.
Okay.
But we bought the factory in 2013. That's when I feel like we started business, really, because we didn't have any way of even doing anything.
So 11 years.
11 years, I'd say 11 years, seriously, yeah.
Okay. So in the 11 years that you guys brought this new product to the market, because you have the patent on it, have you found competitors trying to copy what you guys have done?
Well, the only time I saw that, we went to Korea. We put a field in Korea. And there were two fields. We put one in, and there's another field going in next to it. And when we got there, they already had poles that matched our poles into the field next to it.
Oh, wow.
So they'd already copied because we had to send drawings to them of what we're going to submit and things, and they'd already copied it that. But that was in Korea. So I haven't seen it here.
Didn't have any ability to pursue that
No,
at all.
not at all.
It's just international
there wasn't
dealings. Yeah, because
so.
in the U.S., you would have some grounds there, probably be like, hey, hold on a second.
Yeah, when you get a patent, you decide whether you're going to get a U.S. patent or a Mexican patent or an international patent. You have choices there, and we didn't have all that. So.
I bet there's an international patent now.
Yeah, there might be. I don't know.
Right out of Korea.
I'm not sure. So,
yeah, interesting.
But I haven't seen it here. No, not at all. So, actually, for if you look at the fence, it's pretty whatever. There's a lot more to it, a lot of engineering to it. In fact, our first hiree was really Brian Graves, who are an engineer, because he's just brilliant when it comes to design and things. And I remember one of the first things he said, now, do you guys want to keep winging this, or do you want this thing engineered?
Oh, I love that.
Do you want to really do it, or do you want to...
I love that.
Wow, that took some guts.
Yeah. And we thought, I thought we were doing pretty good,
Yeah.
But anyway. So
that can go two ways, right? Yeah.
So,
the people can get offended, or they can be like, this is the guy I want to take
just
us to the next stage.
Looking at the fence, there's a lot more into it a lot more design into it than
you can't just copy it.
It'd be pretty hard to do it and do it successfully anyways.
Okay.
You could over time, but it wouldn't be really easy to do. So
that's like a really is that on purpose? Because that's like to me that what I hear is we have this intricately designed product, and that in a way is kind of some kind of defense mechanism against copycat products. Was that an accident or?
Accident, yeah.
Total accident.
Yeah. So
it's working out.
Yeah, Bob had this idea. He made a little model in his garage on a piece of plywood, and I went down and looked at it. And the fence today looks really similar to what he had envisioned back in 2008. Wow. Again, all the clips and clamps. And we have things in it when the wind blows 65 miles an hour, it breaks a clip rather than hurting the fence at all. We have a lot of those features into it. Those are things that would take time to figure out, really,
That's really cool. Yeah, little things like that. Yep. Wow.
Yeah, and for people who don't know, like, kind of the whole idea of the safety part of this fence is that its poles are retracted behind it a ways and kind of canvases up to hold the netting that you would run into, so you don't have a kid running full tilt into a pole, number one, or like a
beam or a
chain link fence.
Beam,
Yep. Nothing hard to run into. The foul poles are hard, but they're padded much like a football goal post would be padded. So they're a padded thing.
Yep,
so
yep.
that's all there is to it. So, but you know, the whole thing from the beginning is another thing I think is sort of important is none of us ever talked in our meetings, the four of us, about are we going to make a lot of money. That was never really the motivation. At least it wasn't talked about at all. The motivation at the time was, again, this factory let 60-some people off 2 years earlier, and we thought, wouldn't it be great if we could create a business in the North Country, in Lewis County, in Croghan, that could hire some people with good-paying jobs and could be a solid business. That was our goal from the beginning. So from my seat where I'm sitting, for at least for me, that was very much my goal. That goal's kind of been accomplished. Like, there's no need for me anymore. I don't need to be a part of any great success or anything. We're doing okay, and we got a good team in place to move it forward. So it's awfully nice to have that be your goal. If your goal is to make a ton of money, you're disappointed. We'd be disappointed. We wouldn't be in business still because we wouldn't have lasted this long, you know.
Yeah,
so,
right.
So I just thought about that more recently. I'm so glad that we weren't motivated by that, you know. So it's good.
Must not have been, because you quit teaching at 19 years.
Yes, it was. It's never been about the money, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, that's definitely easier said than done. Like, it's very, the stresses of life can, for a lot of people, if you've got a family you're taking care of and whatever, like, as soon as your job kind of looks like it's faltering a little bit, like, the stressors start to come quick.
Yeah, it's...
if you're not prepared.
And again, God's had his hand on me and my family, and just... that's the way it's been. So gives you some confidence there too a little bit. So
one of the main qualities that an entrepreneur as well as businesses need is the ability to pivot. If you can't pivot, you can't succeed. Is the rise of the multiple products in Grand Slam, was that a major pivot for the company? Was there a realization that maybe that was something that was needed to keep pushing forward, some diversification, something like that?
Absolutely. We talked a long time that we have to add a new product every couple of years. I don't know if it's actually in our bylaws or not, but we've talked about that. So we have 3 patents now, and I think it's part of our ethic to try to always come up with a new product every couple of years.
Okay.
Just for that reason.
It's like written down, like this is like we say ethic, like that's a big deal. Like this is one of our main core beliefs is to come up with a new product every couple of years.
Yeah, I think less than 1% of the Fortune 500 companies are 100 years old. Or they don't last that long. So the only way you're going to last, I think, is to change, right? If you keep changing, you're a new company every time you change a little bit, I think. So if you want longevity, you almost have to, I believe. Like, who knows? I don't doubt that 30 years from now, maybe Grand Slam won't be doing anything with sports. Maybe a whole new market of some sort.
There are a lot of companies like that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that are doing. They have multiple departments that have nothing to do with each other.
Right.
Or, you hear a lot about that with like companies, like from the 30s or 40s or whatever that I'm trying to think of one on the spot here, like Monsanto or DuPont, like they were in some specific business and now they do something that has nothing to do with that. Right. And that's always been fascinating to me.
Sure. Yeah.
But that to me, I just kind of chopped, like I always assume that was just, there's some greed behind those motivations, but these large corp companies, they have different motivations.
Well, I
I
think typical pure business is all about greed, I think, isn't it? It's all about making money. I think the big typical businesses, it's unusual if you have one that's not. I mean, I think when you have a smaller business, you have more control over that. I mean, you have control over your business is what your real focus needs to be and what you want. But if you're going to have shareholders and all those kind of things that's what they want, So, we're not there yet at Grand Slam, so it's not
like Coca-Cola being a pharmacy company or something like that. And now they sell soft drinks. Something like that. It's always been fascinating to me. Yeah. Anyway, what was the first product this is just interesting to me. What was the first product that was different than the initial fence idea? Do you remember?
Well, first of all, our fencing was an outdoor product.
Okay.
I don't know how much time you really want to talk about all this, but
You can make it as quick or as detailed as you want.
well, so there's a softball tournament in Krogan every 4th of July. And Bob's, I think his sister used to run Schultz's, and they wanted to borrow our truck, our box van to run their concession stand out of. And they wanted us to give them $50 for advertising. And I'm thinking, oh, it's Krogan. What's going to go on there? Yeah, we'll do it just to be a good neighbor. We'll do that, right?
Yeah.
Well, while we're there, somebody from Utica saw the truck, called us, and wanted to know what we were all about. Because he had an indoor facility, and they wanted to put something on the indoors to protect their athletes from the walls and the beams and this kind of thing. And we realized that, we can do our outdoor product indoors. Just got to make a few changes here and there, but we can do that. So hence our first indoor product was from the Krogan softball tournament in July 4th. And that was our first modification of the product we do now. I think the first real new product we're making were some vertical lift divider curtains. Oh. Okay. And then we went to vertical lift batting cages.
Batting cages.
And at the time, we decided we wanted, again, do something different and better, so we've used bigger, more powerful motors, so they're faster than anybody else's. Yeah. So they go up and down real fast. So if you're in the business of an indoor sports facility trying to make money, and you got a soccer group coming in at 7 o'clock and a lacrosse group at 8 o'clock, how fast you can transition that whole facility is very, very important. So they found that these high-speed products are valuable to them.
That was half the sales pitch. I could see it in there.
Yeah.
How fast you can
turn
over
two.
your
right,
exactly.
I don't even have one. I'll take
and then we done.
You're a good salesman.
I will refrain from asking what's different about that motor than the competitor's motor.
Yes, we can.
Probably only interesting to me, but whatever. Okay.
It's a 3-phase motor, and it's 2 or 3 horsepower, as opposed to single phase being a half or 3/4 horsepower. So
that makes sense.
Horsepower mostly.
Yeah, I could see how that would be super valuable.
Yep.
Okay. We have a problem here. The problem is that there is a lot that we would like to touch on with your life, because you outlined in the first 20 minutes like all the different things that you've done, and we don't have enough time to go through all of them, but we can move on to basketball. I would love to hear about, I don't know if you want to start with your high school basketball endeavors, or what you had Beaver River had a pretty good team back then, right? Was there
That's
like
an understatement, I think.
Yeah, was there like a championship run there that you want to walk us through, and what it was like playing for Beaver River in the heyday? Yeah,
so again, I was very blessed to grow up in Beaver River when I did. Our coaches were consistent. Like when I was in 3rd grade, I knew who my track and field coach would be. I knew who my basketball coach would be. They were there, and I had this incredible basketball coach. He's kind of a legend, Bob Giordano. And he was just, he just expected so much from you. He expected you to be better than you could possibly be. So, and as a young guy, again, eyes wide open, we just all bought right into that whole thing. So
how did he do that? Like, how did you know that that's how he felt?
Well,
was it through literal teaching?
And back in those days, he was hard. He was harsh.
Okay.
He was tough on you. One time when I was a sophomore playing on varsity, he kicked me out of a scrimmage and said I was the worst he ever had. Get out of here. You're the worst I ever had.
And that communicates he knows you can be better than you thought.
Yeah, I didn't even know exactly what I was doing. So I'm down in the locker room after the scrimmage. All the seniors and juniors come down and I go, "Am I kicked off the team?" And they go, "No, just come tomorrow. He'll forget about it by tomorrow." So anyway,
that's hilarious.
But that kind of thing, that really affects you as a 10th grader, right? So
what did you think after that?
It can affect you 2 ways. Like it can make you crumble, or it can pull the best thing out of you.
Yeah, and what I've realized since then is because I have a good family. I went home to a mother that loved me and a father that loved me. It doesn't matter what my coaches said to me. They could do whatever they wanted to, and it was going to be okay.
Yeah.
I think if you didn't have that support at home, though, it could be a hard thing. And I don't know what it was like back then as far as family so much, but I don't think he coached everybody successfully. But for me and my group, was. So
it's an interesting insight.
So there was a situation I remember in particular. We're playing this. He was just a genius with basketball. He was way ahead of his time. We were playing all these combination defenses back in the 70s when they weren't even a thing. Anyways, they're just really interesting. And there's a situation where I was supposed to be guarding a guy in the corner as well as helping out with the guy in the low post. And I couldn't do both. I just couldn't do it. And he got right in my face. And I says, "Coach, I can't be both places." And he says, "Well, if you can't be both places, you can't play for me. Get off the court." What's that say to a 16-year-old, So, well, it makes you try really, really hard to be both places. And even though you really can't do it, you can almost do it, and you can affect it in some way probably. So anyway, so he was just his high expectations, and we had a very good teams, and he was fair and consistent. He wasn't mean to us. He treated everybody the same. So, but we had a lot of success. So my senior year, we won sectionals, and then we won the next game, the regional game, which would put you in the Final Four today, but they didn't have a Final Four then. They were just working towards that. So we are one of the few teams that ends the year with a win, right? So we always wondered what we could have done at that point. So,
Right.
So yeah, I had a great high school career, and I went to college and played at Potsdam State under Jerry Welsh, who was Coach of the Year 3 times. He's been, in fact, Jerry, I still talk to him. I saw him went down to visit him last year, and he's been inducted into 6 Hall of Fames.
Whoa.
So he's an amazing guy.
He must be fairly old at this point.
Yeah, he is. He's in his late 80s. I thought he was old back when I played,
Okay.
but he wasn't, right? I mean, everybody looked old back then, kind of thing. So,
Right.
yeah, in fact, I asked him, I said, so, Coach, what's your biggest claim to fame in basketball? And he says, I'm probably the only guy in the world that can walk into Duke University's gym, and Krzyzewski will give me a hug. I can get in my car, go across the town to the University of North Carolina, and is it Roy Williams or something?
Yep.
He'll give me a hug. Nobody else can get both that, he said. So,
They're rivals. They're big rivals. Yeah.
Big rivals.
So I went to college with I was highly skilled because my not skill. I shouldn't use the word skill because I wasn't highly skilled, but I was well trained in basketball. I knew how to play the game, kind of thing. So I was not as athletic as most of the guys on the team, kind of thing. But because I had good training, good fundamentals, I guess is the word for it, I was able to make the team. So that was a good opportunity for me.
What kind of ball player were you positionally? Were you a shooter?
Yeah, I was a shooting guard, and there was no 3-point shot back then, so there was no advantage to that. So today it would have been differently, but yeah, so I was a shooting guard.
Okay.
But yeah, we had
Who were some of the guys you played with in high school? What were the names?
Yeah,
names?
so Mike Verkard, who went on to play at Hamilton College.
Okay.
Jim McCabe, who went on to play at Lemoyne University. Jim Riley, who high jumped at Tufts University.
Okay.
And Jim Mon, who played baseball at Union College. So
starting 5, the big 5.
Starting 5,
you and those 4 guys.
Yeah, all played.
All went to play collegiate sports at high level.
Yep.
Put them all on a high school team. Pretty good high school team.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh yeah, I hear legends of those teams. Benny Rogie tells.
So Benny was part of my year.
Yeah.
So Benny would have been 6th, 7th man on that team, kind of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, he talks about Coach Gio the same way.
Yeah.
Sounds like you had some good coaching when you were playing ball.
Again, for me, my coaches were important to me. The fact that they were hard on me was important to me.
Yep.
My football coach was hard on us. Our track and field coach expected a lot. That was just really healthy. I mean, I think I have to give a lot of my, I'll say, stick-with-itness or my grit or whatever I have that makes you stick with something even when it's not going well. I attribute that to my father and to my coaching. Very important. So I feel bad that nowadays those coaches really wouldn't exist today, I don't think.
Yeah.
And it's kind of too bad, although I guess some took it to a high of a level. But my coaches were great. I had great coaching, great upbringing, very important to my life.
Did you say football?
Football, yeah.
Play football in the fall?
Yep.
Like it was a normal thing every year. It wasn't just a one-off. Like you were. Okay.
Yeah. That was my favorite sport, actually. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Were you good at it as basketball and track and field?
I understood the game of football very well.
What did you play?
I was a quarterback.
Okay.
So,
You're probably pretty good at it.
Yeah.
So,
For
again,
sure.
I didn't have a great arm or anything, but I understood the game. You know? So I was never very good. Really, never talented. So I just had to work really hard to get good at stuff. So.
I relate to that.
Yeah.
So,
That's me. That's me.
Right, yeah,
Like
so.
the places I got to go and play in college and stuff like that was like there was guys there that were just so talented and it seemed like it kind of just came to them.
Right.
Like that was not me. Like I had to work my tail off.
Yep.
And I relate to so much of this. I respond well to that same kind of coaching. Like we had Dan Myers, and Dan Myers was a lot that way. Like there was a expectation for the program, and you were going to put the work in and work hard, and we wanted to do the best we could. And like if you weren't doing the best you could, you'd know about it. And for me, it made me want to be so much better, which then really helped me in my college career, and then really helped me in my policing career. Like I had one point, one of my commanding officers came to me and was like, I was maybe 3 months on the road by myself. He was like, hey, like your stop numbers are a little down. Like you're not stopping enough cars. You're not being proactive enough. And I was like, Roger that, like 10-4, I got you. And I went out the next month and stopped like, 60 cars or something like that. Yeah. Those poor people were on the front end of it. He was testing me. Yeah. So another couple months later, I was on like a plainclothes unit, kind of an undercover deal that he was looking for me to respond, and how I would respond to that, which was been tied into me through all of my coaches and yeah, it's just awesome.
So question for each of you guys. So, I mean, I can say that I was as good a basketball player as I could be when I walked out of that gym that last game. Good as I could be. And at the time I didn't think much of that, but as I look back, that's important to be able to say that in life. What have you done in your life, each of you, that you felt you did as well as you could possibly do at?
That's a tough one.
Yeah, that came late for me. Yeah, I think I matured a little later in life, if I'm being honest. We got married. We had no money. I lost a job early on in our marriage, and the next job that I got, there was no option of losing that job. Like I had no choice but to succeed, and that really grew me up a little bit. And I feel like I left that job giving it everything that I had. But that was the first point in my life where I felt like, oh, this is what it feels like to kind of leave everything on the table. And it was a very unfamiliar feeling, but I'll never forget it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. For me, it would have been around that time of, early marriage. Yeah.
Probably same. I think like I had a lot of reasons for leaving policing, but I felt like when I left I was leaving it on really good terms. The police chief there had kind of said, if you ever need a job, come back. That felt good to me. That felt like what I had done to this point was at least justified in his eyes, or at least I had put in the effort to have that kind of response. So maybe that's what it was. Maybe that was that moment.
Yeah,
sure.
Or kind of like,
but it always requires effort, doesn't it? It always requires extra effort, more than what you're even comfortable with, probably, right?
Yeah. Well, not a lot of people would get that invitation. Like there's lots of guys there who would maybe not get that invitation. Just, hey, my door's always open. If you ever need a job, here it is. And like,
I had a similar experience. Like that would have been a highlight for me as well. Like I was told the same thing, and that meant so much to me. Like that was the first time that I thought to myself, okay, I did a good job in somebody else's eyes. Like I must have done a good job.
Sure.
And that meant a lot to me, and it was pretty formative.
So how do you guys, with your young children or as they're growing up, how do you lovingly challenge your kids to be as good as they can be at things?
That's really hard.
You go ahead and take that one, Nick.
Yeah, so I've got two boys, and they're our oldest. We have two boys and two girls in that order. And the lovingly part, doing it lovingly is, I find it challenging. Not because I'm an angry father. I find not in that regard at all, but to not feel like you're hurting them when you're pushing them, I find challenging. And I have no desire to be a soft parent. I never have. Anybody who knows me would laugh at that. My wife would laugh at that. I don't have a desire to be a soft parent, but I still find it difficult to push my boys, and I'm still figuring it out. I don't have any answers yet. I have no experience.
I've wondered, like this coach we talked about, I wish he died last year. So did he know that being super hard on us was really ultimately good for us? I think he did. I don't think no reason he wouldn't like us. I mean, we were playing like crazy for him, right? Why would he like us, right? So I think that, again, he didn't let us know that, but I think he lovingly challenged us, I think, in his own way. So,
yeah,
that's a hard balance to, how do you stay loving in your approach, but also kind of calling them to something more?
Right.
Most people get that wrong.
Yeah. And
you can crush somebody's spirit if you don't do it right.
Yeah.
I think like knowing Tyson, my brother Tyson had kind of one time talked about disciplining his kids and being able to recognize in each individual child when they had come to realize they did something wrong. and they had humbled themselves. And they all do it at different stages. Well, then your response to them is different. So it's like a interdisciplinary measure to see what's your son's temperament. Is he coming forward? Does he know? Is he repentant? Stuff.
Yeah. Do you think that children respond differently based on their own personalities, and that so take your coach, for example. Were there kids on the team that did not have the temperament to receive that well? And did that matter? Did it seem like it mattered to him, and how did he change the way he treated them, or was it just either sunk or swim?
I think it did. There's a couple of kids he didn't seem to ride as hard as the rest of us, and they were equally as good. They equally had all the reasons to do that. So for some reason, I think the really great coaches, I think the really great parents have a touch for all that. You have a touch for all that, and how you do it, Brock's can be different than how Nick does. Nobody can emulate somebody else's style, right? You got to find that, and each kid's different. So I just think the great coaches and the great parents have a touch for how to do that.
Okay.
Like almost taking the kid to the limit, without breaking their spirit, like you say, and
whatever that limit is,
whatever that limit
for
is,
each one.
different. Yeah. So I think
some students or some athletes might respond better to positive reinforcement, even if it's just weird, like, is that person internally motivated or externally motivated, and how are they going to respond if I come down hard on them? Or maybe you have to do it one time and see how they respond, and then be like, okay, can't really do it that way again.
Right.
I got to take an alternate route, but
yeah,
that's encouraging to hear. I appreciate hearing from. I really respect the way that it sounds like the coaching was done. Like that sounds really nice to me. I think that sounds like a good way of doing it. It's a little old fashioned now, maybe, but I almost feel like I'm going a little insane sometimes when I think, isn't that how we used to do things? And is there anything wrong with that? So but on the flip side, I feel it's encouraging to hear that even he had kind of a nose for how far to take some kids based on the kids, how that kid is, and that it's okay to do that. That you don't have, as a father, I can weigh the thoughts, feelings, the personality of my kids, and throttle back when needed. And I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not holding them to a different standard. I'm not going soft on them. Like that it's okay for me to have feelings and to have foresight and to use that as a parenting tool. I find that very encouraging, because our boys are very different. And as I'm sure most families are, like the boys and the kids are all different. It's like kind of parenting too. I wouldn't say opposite. I wouldn't compare them and say they're opposites, but two very different boys. And I struggle with, am I being too hard on one or not being hard on the other? Is it fair? Am I being fair and equitable? And is there justice and the triangle relationship? Like, what they're watching me do to their brother. It's just hard to know if you're doing it right ever all the time.
Your generation I think does a better job actually of having a little bit of a friendship with your kids as well. Like my relationship with my father, I respect him incredibly, and I know he loved me and I loved him, but it was very much a father-son relationship. He was in charge and whatever. So
I would love to know what that looked like. On like a day-to-day. Like, can you describe what that kind of relationship with your father looks like? Do you? Took you fishing, right?
Yeah. No, we did fun things, but I guess it was more like the interpersonal stuff. Like I would never talk to my father if I had a girlfriend problem or something. Okay. Right. Or if I had a problem with a teacher, I'm not going to go home and complain to my father about it.
Yeah.
That kind of discussion just didn't happen. Or if he hurt my feelings, I wasn't going to say, Dad, you hurt my feelings. That wasn't going to happen. I think nowadays you guys maybe grew up that way a little bit more, and certainly your kids are growing up that way a little more. I can share real quickly. So when I was teaching and I was observing, one thing a teacher learns is a lot about parenting, because you see kids who are struggling and you realize they're where it came from, probably, right?
Yeah.
And I saw these young kids who were really good athletes, and their parents would almost kind of like worship them. And it was really weird to me. And I saw it really being hard on the kids to be put on a pedestal at such a young age because they're good at a sport necessarily. So I had a son who was quite athletic, and I was not going to let that happen, right? So I'm not complimenting for anything, you know. Every time he did well at something, I'd just say, well, you know, Carl, the only reason you're good is because God made you good. So nothing to do with you anyway. So I think it was a sophomore year in high school. He said to me once, he goes, Dad, aren't you proud of me for anything? Oof. Like I go, wow, that really kind of hit the nerve a little bit. I had kind of overdone it a bit, you know. But my point is, I'm so thankful that he felt he had a relationship with me that he could say that. Because had he not said that, and I just kept being that way, oh my gosh, that would have been terrible, right?
It could have led to some bitterness, some
whatever,
resentment.
Right now we have a great relationship, but and I was just trying to be a good parent, you know. I was just trying to make sure they didn't get spoiled or get big head or whatever you talk about, you know. So, but so there's a dance to it, and there's a balance to it. But you guys, I think, can have more of a feedback with your kids than maybe I would have had with my father. So.
You probably went to all of Carl's games, I'm assuming. Were you a present?
No, on purpose I wouldn't go to some. Just so he wouldn't feel like he was that important, you know? I mean, it was awful, right? I wouldn't. No, I'm not going tonight.
Just because.
Just because.
Yeah. I would so my father would have he came to all of the games that he was able to come to. And but did not cross the line of worshiping us as athletes. Right. Like I think he did a good job of staying right in the middle where he belonged. Now that I can look back and understand it more. And I really appreciated that. Like he'd come to the game, and like every kid, I noticed that. Never said anything, never told him like how much I enjoyed that he thought that I was valuable enough for him to come and watch me play, or support what I was doing. Never said anything like that. I just knew. I knew, and in years and years and years of him showing up at all of the games that he could, I took notice, and it meant a lot to me. And then we get in the van and we go home, and he would have criticism for a day that I played poorly, and he would even be upset sometimes at my attitude on the field and what I could have done better, or even if it was just my performance and how he knows I'm better than that. Like it didn't matter because he came to my game, and that meant more to me, and I knew because he could say those things to me, and he could say it in the way that he said it, and it didn't hurt me because he balanced it out perfectly. Yep. And it's something I really appreciate about my father. And so it's interesting hearing, your perspective on how you went with Carl and all that. Yeah. But
so I got
thankful
to the point
that I didn't have a parent that worshipped.
After games, I would say to my kids, so when you're ready to want some criticism or some constructive criticism on how it went, let me know, kind of thing. And that worked pretty good, because sometimes they would never ask, but sometimes they would, and it was okay that way. Because after the game, nobody wants to talk of
especially if it's not a good
didn't
game.
Go well, right? You don't want to talk about it really. So,
it kind of goes back to what your original question was. Like, is it okay to kind of push your kids to go through harder things, to kind of build some calluses of character, and where is that balance?
Right.
Like when I think I'm probably similar. My parents came. I mean, I was in college in Connecticut, and like they were there a lot. I remember them being there a lot. That meant a lot to me. But also I never felt like the relationship that I had, especially with my dad, was kind of like, I'm proud of you and do the best you can, and whatever happens, do it the best you can and have fun. And like, I'm very competitive, so it's very easy to be like, I just can't do it right, whatever. And my dad was never like, yeah, you're right, you were terrible today, or whatever. So I don't know, different shades.
Yeah.
Who knows? But probably because I was getting that from my coaches. Maybe he knew that that's not what he needs to hear.
Yeah, interesting.
And you look back at that as you had a good experience because of all that balance, right? Your
and it meant a lot to me that they were there, showing up and driving all the way and getting a hotel and spending money and just encouraging me in what I was doing. It's like, if I can do that with my kids, it's like, you don't need to be the next Usain Bolt in track. You don't need to be the next Barry Bonds, and so perspective matters, and the delivery from the heart matters. Like you said, what your dad said, like if it was delivered the wrong way, could have hurt, could have been more detrimental than positive. Yeah. What
you liked track and field as well and excelled at that in high school?
I was
switching gears here.
Again, I had my 3 older brothers were all more athletic than me and smarter than me. So so
were you the youngest?
I was the youngest. Yeah. So they're all really good track athletes. I was medium track athlete, but I coached track, and I felt like I felt like I became a good student of track when I coached it, because there's 13 events in track and field, so you really to do it really well, you got to really know 13 events. So I really enjoyed the challenge of learning 13 events as a coach. So
Yeah, I never got into track.
I wish
feel like
I wish you
would've
could have
liked
coached when I did it, because I hated it.
yeah. Oh, really? Yeah.
It was a labor of love, and I wouldn't even say I wasn't even good at the labor part. Like it was. I was not I was a lacrosse player, and then we moved to Beaver River. Beaver River doesn't have lacrosse, and that was devastating.
Right.
Because that was my sport, and I was mad for 2 years that I had to do track and field, but I did it, and I don't know why. I told myself to stay in shape. I mean, I was 165 pounds wet, so I didn't really need to stay in shape. But yeah, maybe if you'd have been around, it could have been a little different.
About that. Yeah, lacrosse is a great game too, isn't it?
I love it.
It's a great game. You watch it. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. My 7-year-old was we went to Watertown the other day, and he wanted to come with me because he wanted to stop at Salvation Army and see if they had any lacrosse sticks on sale. And that just that hit me in a way that, man, 20 years later, and my son is saying he wants to get a lacrosse stick.
That's awesome.
This is strange. This is a strange world I've ended up in. But anyway, so what would you have done in track and field? Sprinter, long
I was
distance?
a middle distance guy, so 400, 800
the
meter.
worst.
Yep.
The worst.
So yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
What? So I ran the 400 as well. Just long legs. That's what they. I don't know. I don't know what they saw. But what was your fastest 400 time?
My fastest 400 time was 52.5.
Okay.
But my older brother, David, who's 75 years old now, he still has a record at Beaver River.
Oh.
And he ran at Princeton University.
Okay.
And he got a chance to run against the world record holder at the Madison Square Garden one time. So
The Princeton.
yeah. See,
Princeton Tigers. Yeah.
And so he ran against who was that?
James. He had the world record for 20 some years. In fact, my brother Dave was a really good runner, but not that good, right? So he got beat by this guy by a lot in Madison Square Garden. He said that was when I realized that I'm really not that good.
Yeah, James, not like Jesse James.
No, it was.
He's a runner, right? He was like
I think
World
so.
War. That was a little earlier though, World War II era. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't think right now, but
That's okay. So from a small town in the top of New York, nowhere, to Princeton to Madison Square Garden, running against the world record holder. And then those were your older brothers, and that's why you were kind of like.
He ran 49.5 in high school.
Okay.
That was they didn't have
That's still the record.
first as a state meet he ran 49.5. That was the first time he wore a pair of track shoes at the state meet. Some guy in town lent him a pair of track shoes because the guy in town had run in college or something like that.
So before that, it was
1967,
just
right?
running,
So
yeah.
So
Fastest I ever ran it was 54, and I never had a shot. That was at an indoor track. We had to run around twice.
oh, that's hard in an
Run
indoor
around
track.
twice. Yeah. I guess so.
Yeah, that's
just turning
that's
more.
slow. It's supposed to be slow. Yeah, more turns are slow. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
maybe
good.
Maybe it wasn't 54. Maybe it was 56.
A 53 outdoors on a non-windy day.
That doesn't sound right. I don't think I could.
If the wind was following you around down a hill.
Yeah.
I love competition. I love strategy. I love to think about strategy and things.
Yeah.
Everything in my life is strategy. I can't help it. I just think of it that way. So. Yeah.
You really played 3 different sports team-wise. So football is fully a team sport. There's no individualism. There's no pressure on the individual. Yeah, if the quarterback throws you the ball, you're the one that has to catch the pass. But for the most part, football is fully a team sport with very little individualism. Basketball is a little bit in between sports like, swimming and track, where it's kind of you out there and it's you against yourself or 2 other guys or 3 other guys. Basketball is kind of a little bit of both. It's a team sport, but there's quite a bit of individualism in there. Like there's only 5 guys out there, and you have to know what you're doing to make the people around you succeed. And there's a bit more of a spotlight in basketball. And then there's track, where it's just you get out there and it's just you. And I did not enjoy that. Like I was more of a team sport guy. Lacrosse. Even now, basketball, I like basketball, but football and lacrosse, like fully team sports, I thrived a little more kind of playing more as a team. But I remember like being physically nauseous going up to the blocks before a track and field race. It just didn't.
I was the same way. I did not like track. I ran track because all my family ran track.
Okay, I was going to ask you.
So I didn't like the individual part. I love team sports. I love partnerships. I love all of that. Yeah. And I feel like basketball, more than any other game, is the ultimate team sport because 5 lesser players can truly beat 5 better players if they play well.
Okay.
Yeah. More so than any other sport I know. In football, the lesser team only wins if there's turnovers, some odd penalties, that kind of thing. But in basketball, you can truly, just by playing well together, beat a better team.
Yeah, and they make the best movies. Yeah, those stories
right,
in basketball.
Best movies, absolutely.
Best stories.
Absolutely, do. So
because there's aspects of baseball that are kind of like it's you and the pitcher.
Right.
Really, like your individual game can propel your team, and if you all play good individual games, then you can succeed. But you can't really do that in basketball. You get found out pretty quick.
Yeah. So it's a great game. I love it. So.
We just had Kalani Zaire. Do you know Kalani Zaire? Yeah, we just had him on, and we went over Lowville's state run in basketball and with the McCully boys, and I actually just found that it's on Facebook still. You can find the whole game on Facebook.
Game.
Yeah,
that was one of the saddest things in sports for me. At the time, I didn't feel that bad about it because I figured, well, next year they're going to be all that much better, right?
Right.
I just figured it's going to be a problem, but
this is good.
There was no next year, right?
And they were on the track to they were
right.
When are they in the section finals or they were like on their way again, and then just
that was a very sad thing for them.
Unrealized potential, really, and we'll never know.
Right.
That's the hardest part because really, the next year would have been their best year, probably.
Yep.
Because you'd have Chad Bach would have been a senior and the McCully boys would have been juniors. And then the McCully boys' senior year was kind of like a few games with local teams, and that was it. Yeah. And then it was just it.
Yeah, it was really sad. So, and if you really enjoy sport, if you really are a sports person, those are the memories you have. Like winning at championships, your whole life you keep that in you. It's just So
it doesn't go away.
To have that taken away from those kids, sort of, or something, is really sad to me. Yeah.
Did you follow that team pretty close?
I did. Yeah, because it's just good basketball. They played really good.
That's
basketball.
what I was going to ask you. Like just from your coach, your playing days with Coach Giordano, and then it seemed like they played good basketball.
Yeah.
And when you go to these big arenas in Albany and Syracuse and Binghamton, like the people that were in the stands that didn't know who they were, they're like, that's a good basketball.
It is.
Yeah.
That's just
very rare that at that level to not have a 1 or 2 star show. And Loudville comes in and it's like 5 guys playing good basketball. Like it
didn't really care who scored. It seemed like it was just a team.
I think your question sort of was going to be how, as I watched them play, I guess the sectional finals in Syracuse, I think it was, and I'm watching thinking, this Giordano was just a genius at finding teams' weak spot and just exploiting it. But there was not really I'm thinking, where's their weak spot? They don't have any weak spot really. So they were a really good team.
Yeah, well coached.
Yeah.
Do you still lace them up every once in a while? Is sports a part of your life at all these days, or?
I have knee problems.
Active.
I have knee issues, so I'm down to biking, and walking and rowing.
No knocking biking. I love biking.
No, I biked across Iowa last summer. So
what? Okay, next time you do it, I want to go.
Yeah. They have an event there. It was 466 miles. I flew to Chicago. My brother-in-law picked me up. And
we got to get into that. Okay, so
that's a great
is
event.
Iowa a very narrow state, or was it?
Well, you start out
400. How many miles?
Oh, 400.
468 miles. You start with your rear
How did
wheel.
You bike across Iowa?
Your rear wheel in the Missouri River, and you end with your front wheel in the Mississippi River. That's the event. So
that sounds awesome.
And we were going across the southern part, so it was very beautiful rolling hills and things. It was a 6-day event. So
you do stop at night and then?
Well, yeah, you camped out in a tent on the ground. That was probably the worst part. But
I was gonna say that sounds kind of fun.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah. Well, at my age,
you're probably super tired, and that's the last thing you want to do at the end of the day is pitch a tent.
It's a big event out there, so every town makes a big deal of it.
Yeah.
You guys, there's.
This is like 70 miles a day.
Yeah, there's like 12,000 bikers or something doing the thing.
Wow.
So.
Okay.
That's crazy. So it literally started with you being like, so do you play sports at all? He's like, yeah, just like ultra biking pretty much across full states.
Well, it wasn't that. But anyway, so I still like those challenges. I was able, my knees are still good. I did the 46 high peaks with my son. That was a really cool thing to do. And I'd encourage that with your kids someday. That's a local thing here. It's just really good. So
you'll Adirondack 46, right? Yeah.
You have a favorite mountain? favorite of the 46 that you sticks out that you remember, or is it all kind of blend into one?
It all blends into one. I think it's all about the days. Carl would give me 1 weekend a year, so whether the weather's bad or good, we're going to do it that weekend, no matter what, because we had planned ahead. So, some of the bad weather weekends, you hardly saw anything, right? And then the good weather weekends, they were beautiful. So it's just, it's an awesome thing. You get on top of a mountain, and as far as you can see, there's no mankind things. There's no power lines. There's no houses or buildings. It's really pretty cool. It's a great mind that these people had to make the Adirondacks for a while back in the 1920s or something, whatever it was. So it's a really cool experience. Yep.
Switch gears for a second. I want to go back to your transition around, like, probably between high school and college and the rest of your life. I think you mentioned at the beginning of the conversation that you weren't really somebody who kind of knew what they wanted to do. Is that true? Is that an accurate assessment?
Yeah, I think, right? I'm not sure how you guys are. A good question for you anyways, but some people have a passion. I knew teachers who taught 35 years. You ask them at the retirement dinner, if you could live life again, what would you do? They said, I'd be a teacher. I mean, that's their passion, right?
Yep.
I think there's people in the police force that are. I think there's people in the fire departments that are. People have a passion. Engineers generally have passions for what they do. I think that's just the way they are. I've never had that. So for me to change careers 5 times, it wasn't like I was leaving my passion. So I think that's why I just really enjoyed the renewal, starting new at something, the learning curve being so steep at that point. I really enjoyed that because I wasn't, again, I didn't have one thing. I didn't feel like God made me to be this, kind of thing. So,
I had a very similar experience. Leaving high school, I had friends who knew, my 2 best friends knew exactly what they wanted to do. Right. Paul went on to the Coast Guard Academy, and that was a plan.
Yep.
Don't know that he knew that for very long, but at the time, my perspective was, wow, he wants to know he knows what he's wanted to do for a long time. Don't know if that's actually how it went down, but that was what I felt at the time. And then Matt Cheney he was going to go run at Cedarville, and he knew what he wanted to major in, and then there I am, I have no idea. I'm gonna go to JCC and start cheap because that's what you do when you don't know what you want to do, and I'm gonna major in business because that's what you do when you don't know what you want to do. Just go for business or communications or whatever. And I struggled with that a lot, and I didn't know that there were people who were older than me, like yourself, who had already been through that phase of their life, having gone through the same thing. I didn't know. I thought I was an outlier. I thought I had something wrong with me. What would you say to people who are going through that right now, whether they're 18 or they're 25, 26, still haven't figured it out yet? Is it okay to be that way? Do you need a passion, or can you kind of figure it out as you go?
On that topic, it was the worst question when people would ask me when I was like a senior in high school. So what do you want to be?
Yeah.
I had no answer. I know I had an answer. It was just something I made up, because I didn't really have that. Even when I got to college, I got to be a junior, and you had to declare a major. And I don't know. I'm not very good at reading and writing, so I'll go physics. There was not a real passion for all that. But to answer your question, I feel I'm so thankful that I've had all these opportunities, all these different things to learn from, and I have a lot of different experiences that I'm just really, really thankful for that I wouldn't have had if I had had just one passion, one career. So, but again, I think God makes you that way. We need the people with the passions. And so, as your kids are growing up, right, and you be a senior and you start putting pressure on them, what are you going to do, Again, we live in America, which is amazing because you can do anything. You can do absolutely anything in this country if you want to. Not that it's going to be easy, but you can do it. So what a neat opportunity we have. And your generation is one that doesn't do the same career for, like my father's generation, they all had their careers. That was it for their life, know?
Yeah, they would get, my grandpa, Rogie, worked at the co-op for forever, never asked for a raise, was happy for a good job, never looked anywhere else.
Right, content.
Different generation.
So I'm not sure what the next generation will be. Well, they'll even have jobs. Maybe they're all freelance consultants or something. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I know right where you meant. I was never comfortable for me to not know what I really wanted to do. Yeah.
Thankfully, I look back now and I realize I enjoy that's how I am.
Yeah.
And I did not enjoy it back then, but I've come to like how my life has happened so far. And I'm proud of it, and it's okay.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong if you don't know what you want to do when you're 16 years old.
And if it changes, it's okay too, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all, it's
Who knows,
changed a bunch in the last 10 years, and
Right.
that's okay. And I've actually enjoyed it, quite enjoyed it. So yeah.
What were you like, Brock? Would you have a?
I'm just like
right
you
away?
guys.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
No, I wasn't. It's funny. I have a history degree because I think I was in a similar position. It was like junior year. What are you going to do in college? Because like everybody was going to college. So what are you going to do? It's like, well, I like history. I really like it. I'd love to teach it. I had really good history teachers at Lowville. Shout out Mr. Commandor, Mr. Cornell, Mr. Griffiths, Mr. Fail. Yeah. And so like they made the content interesting to me, and I loved it. I loved history. I loved American history especially, and I was like, I'm going to go teach. No problem. So went to college, and once I got into my master's work, which was after I had my bachelor's in history, it was like the Ed TPA started to come in, and all of the different things you had to do were changing, and nobody really knew what was required, and I kind of toiled for like a year, and I was just like, I can't do that anymore. And then Corwin just kind of Corwin, my cousin, was like, let's go take a test in Connecticut for a police job. And I was like, okay.
It's America, right?
Loved it. You can do that. It's America. And I love that too, because like I never had, my mom would tell me, like when I was growing up, she was like, he's going to be a police officer. Like it's all I love to do. It's all I love to do. And I do love it and I miss it, but I'm happy where I am, and I'm okay with not being a master at something, like mastering that skill. But yeah, I'm fine with it. Whatever's next, I'll be fine.
I've seen him in action. He's pretty good at it.
My police stuff, yeah.
It's funny because we do define people by their careers, though, right? Like,
We do,
if you
yeah.
talk about Mr.
Weird.
Cheney, I think of him often, like, what a great teacher. Mr. Cheney was a great teacher, right? What are we going to define? What do we define
He's
that?
good at being good at whatever you did. Yeah, there's something to that about like most conscientious people too who jump around. Like it's different than being aimless and kind of just jumping around because you just don't know anything, or you're not really finding your niche, versus finding something that maybe you didn't think you could do before and deciding I'm going to be really good at this, and then the next thing doing the same thing. And for me, that's kind of way my personality works, so that I feel like I'm very well rounded with a lot of different adaptations to skills that I had, and
And I think, Nick, to your point, that's the training that coaching gives you. Coaching gives you confidence in that you can work hard and see good results, right? That's what the whole idea of coaching is. And in case of in sports, a lot of times it's wins. You get a lot of wins if you work hard.
Yep.
So I have a ton of confidence in my ability to work hard. So when I'm going to take a jump at something, I don't worry about, am I going to work hard at it? I don't. As long as I'm physically able to, as long as my body can do it, I'll do it. So, and that gives you great confidence. So again, I'm thankful for my coaches that train me up in that way. That you can be better than you think you can be if you just work a little harder at it. And
seeing the potential in you and trying to draw that out,
Right.
and not even them drawing it out, that getting you to draw it out of yourself.
Right.
That's super.
and once
important.
you've learned that, that's in you. Then you
Yeah.
got that. That's
Yep.
an ethic you have now. And
Yeah.
that's that. I don't think you'd get that naturally. I don't think anybody's going to push themselves to the limit all by themselves naturally. I guess unless your life depended on it, maybe. But
Yeah.
so the coaching as a young 15, 16, 17-year-old boys, that's very, very important to be able to do that somehow.
So we can start thinking about wrapping up. It's late. I was late. I'm the reason why it's late. You mentioned earlier that what was it? You think that there are jobs that are high value jobs or worthy.
Yeah.
Worthy. So I have known you as a teacher, you were my first employer. I just remembered that as my first employer, technically speaking.
I finally got to paint that barn now. After I don't know how many years it was, but it lasted a long time. So
did I paint it? I think you had me scrape it. I don't think I actually got to painting because it needed such a large amount of scraping
I forgot
work.
about all that.
I'll never. Okay, you probably don't remember this. Maybe you do, because maybe you did this on purpose. I'll never forget when I came over, and the job that you had for me that day was debarking logs. And you gave me like a hand chisel and said, have fun. And there was like a pile of like what looked like 50 logs. And I'm like, aren't there tools for this? Like, is he trying to have I done something wrong? Or
Like
is he
Mr.
trying,
Miyagi?
I was like, this is a classic Bob Chamberlain life lesson. Here's 50 logs. Here's a tiny chisel. Take the bark off of all of them. Yeah, like wax on, wax off, Mr. Miyagi. Anyway, so I've known you in a few different capacities. And I know one thing that I understand about you is that you like to do things that are worthy and of high value. You probably don't like to waste your time. You like to spend your time wisely, and you appreciate high value activity in your life. If not to put you on the spot, but based on how you started interviewing us at the beginning of the podcast, if there was something that you could take from this conversation that you would like to see as high values, or anything that you want to touch on before we step away to make this feel like this was a valuable experience for you? Is there any way that we can make this a valuable experience for you? Anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the question really is necessarily, but
that is good criticism. You are great. You are great at good criticism, and I appreciate that. And you're very subtle about it, but I appreciate it. What I'm trying to say is, I'll try again. Yeah. What I'm trying to say is, how can we make this experience more valuable for you? Do you want to ask us a question? Is there anything you'd like to talk about? Or no, is the answer no?
Something that you're passionate about, even though maybe you're not that passionate about.
Yeah, first of all, I'm not really a good public speaker. I'm not good at this, and you guys have made this very comfortable.
Yeah, you fooled me. This has been really fun, actually.
But you've made it really comfortable. The setting is very comfortable, Brock. It's a man cave, by the way, down here. It's really got a weight set over there, and we got all kinds of cool stuff here. Anyways, so it's been good. I think as you guys grow and things, you get knowledge out of stuff, and you don't even know what the value of that is. Like, I don't really feel like I have much value to offer as far as, again, I've done so many things that have been scattered all over that I'm not an expert in anything, so I just think you guys make sure you realize that everything you're doing has value to it at some point, and it's going to pay dividends someday to you in some fashion. And I just think about, so I went to school to become a physics guy. Now, I'm not using physics. I became a carpenter, Well, then I wanted to go back to teaching, and that physics thing was really handy at that point. So I got done contracting. I became a salesman for a couple years. Well, I had to deal with architects and drawings and all this kind of stuff. Well, now I get to Grand Slam safety. Boy, sure is good that I know how to deal with architects and drawings and understand how big projects work. So all I'm saying here is all these experiences that you sometimes may think don't really have a lot of value to them, I think they ultimately are going to have a lot of value. When you have kids, you got all kinds of opportunity to share that value someday. And I think what you're doing by interviewing all these people, I'm kind of envious of that in a way, because I've listened to 3 of the podcasts, and they've just been fascinating to me. And they're young people. Elliot's was wonderful. And Wilbur's I enjoyed, and Patrick's and things. It's just there's so much out there, and you guys are absorbing all this and sucking it all in. And every one of these, you're getting something out of it, I think. And I think before you're all done with this, I think you ought to have somebody podcast you guys. I mean, let Elliot and Patrick come in and pick your brains and pick your thoughts on things, because I think you have a lot more out there than you have, kind of thing. I'm not sure if that is your question, but I just think that I just really enjoy being around young people. I'll call you guys young people. I miss that. If I miss anything about teaching, it's just not being around young people. I really do like that. I like people. And now that I'm kind of away from Grand Slam, I'm working from home. I'm it's kind of isolated a little bit. So I just really appreciate you guys and what you're doing here and this kind of thing. So.
Yeah, it sounds like we need to get some of those bonfires going again.
Yeah.
I'd be down. Yeah. And bike rides across Iowa.
Oh, goodness.
Hey, I would train for it.
Yeah, it's a good purpose. I thank you for coming on. Like I said,
you're
very busy, and we appreciate you carving out time in your schedule, especially this late at night. I feel like the opposite about you is that I think that you are a very interesting person, and that you have a lot of wisdom and experience because of all that you've done. One of the most fascinating things ways that I look up to you, and that I think is most interesting about you, is that you have such deep and many experiences. Like the fact that you spent so many years as a contractor and then a teacher, and now like you've done so much, and I find that interesting because I can see a little bit of myself in that. I don't think I've lived up. I don't know that I've done as good a job as you, but I'm certainly striving to. But you've had a very interesting life, and I don't think that we got to touch on nearly as much as I wanted to in 2 hours. But if you would be glad to come back on sometime, we'd be glad to have you. Sure. And we can continue this conversation.
And I'll say if there's been a failure in my life at all, and I don't think I've been a bad dad, but I don't think I was as good as I could have been because I've been so. Okay, when I get into something, I get so into it. It was really good that I went into teaching because that is limiting a little bit to how much you can get into something like that. So, but it's such a challenge to be a really great, let's say, business guy or a really great, whatever you're going to be, but also be a really great husband and be a really great father. Those are all just challenges. And there's a balance to it. And I don't think I had that balance perfect by any means. I think I could have done better with that. But you're going to sacrifice somewhere else. Like I don't waste time. I don't do any social media. I don't watch TV. I love football. I do watch football this time of year, but other than that, I don't do that stuff because I'm just busy. I just fill it up. But keep the balance for you guys. Keep your balance the best you can. And sometimes you have to have somebody else point out when your balance isn't good. You should point his out, and he should point yours out. You guys are that close. You could do that. So, anyway. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, so. I think that alone makes this conversation a high value conversation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for spending your time with us here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Very good.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it.
Absolute pleasure.
Nice. So,
Yeah.
good deal.
Thanks.